It's actually Kimberly and Margaret Fox.
You guys live.
All right. Guess we'll kick it off. It's top of the hour. The magic hour of noon. We'll get the conversation started. Hello to everyone who is joining. I'm Mandy Jenkins. I'm the editor-in-chief at Storyful. I'm also on the ASME board, and you guys are joining us for the ASME Expert Series. And today we're going to be talking about whether Facebook is leaving journalism and what all of us are doing about that in the event that they may in fact be doing that. So joining me to talk about this today is Kim Fox, who is the managing editor for audience development at the Philadelphia Media Network, and Daniel Scapuzio, who's the social media manager at the Palm Beach Post. So welcome, you guys.
Hi.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Anyone along the way, anyone who's tuning in, if you have questions and you want to send them our way, tweet at news editors, and we'll get those questions out on here. Cool. Well, let's get started. So we know that Facebook announced it's going to be tweaking newsfeed to favor updates from friends and family over publishers' content. And in the last couple of weeks since this came out, I think we've seen every possible hot take and cold take imaginable from that as to whether or not this is good for journalism, as to whether or not this is good for social media, and if Facebook is going to kill all of us. We've seen all of it. So from your guys' perspective, is this move ultimately a good thing or a bad thing? Dan, let's start with you.
I think initially, I think we had that moment where you sort of like say, oh, this is like terrible, blah blah blah. But then you sit back and reflect about what Facebook has meant to journalism and how it's affected it. And ultimately, I personally feel that I think a lot of good can come from this. The fact that we kind of aren't necessarily going to have to be prostrate to the the Facebook machine to a certain degree, and so I think a lot of good can come from the fact that Facebook is sort of trying to pull away, is having the slow breakup with journalism in a way. So at least that's my quick take.
Kim, what do you say?
I mean, I've been I don't know, I'm not getting as emotional and worked up about it as maybe some of my peers are. I've, taken the viewpoint from when I started this position a year ago that audience development is all about diversity and diversifying your sources, right? So Facebook is one piece of that, but not all of it. I keep saying to folks, Facebook is a business. We're a business. We have a business relationship. At the end of the day, I don't actually fundamentally believe they care deeply about us unless it makes sense from a business standpoint. So they're just completely navigating what they need to do. I think, what Mark said about time well spent and thinking about that, I think if anything, we need to focus on our own owned and operated sites and take that same mentality. So I'm not too worried. I mean, we've seen a little bit of change, but to be honest, our overall referrals in a dip for sure. But in our branded accounts, we're not seeing much of a move as of yet. And, I think part of that is we moved to a subscription model a few months ago, and we are really focusing on, quality over quantity, really effective storytelling, making great content. And I think at the end of the day, consumers, our consumers will gravitate towards that regardless of the platform.
Yeah, and for us at the Post, we're actually having, Kim, the exact same conversations and the same sort of mantra. It's like, hey, trying to just post as many times during the day to see how many referrals we get, in the hopes that we can get X number of clicks or whatever the case may be. Is we're stepping away from that as well and really refocusing on, like Kim said, the quality over quantity. We're doing the same thing here. And for the and here we were having the conversation that for the longest time as a business, we've in the digital age, we've given away all our stuff essentially for free. And it's not free to produce the kind of journalism that we're trying to serve up to the people and democracy and doing what we do best. And it's true. Facebook is it's a great channel for, where you can try to find and connect with people, but ultimately Facebook is a competitor to, to the news business, and we can't, necessarily forget that. It's an important point to make, and I think Kim's point was excellent. That they are a business. We are a business, so let's not fall short of remembering that.
And so, for you guys, are you changing up the social strategy from kind of what it had been, especially going into this year? It's still kind of the beginning of the year. Did we have to tear up the blueprints and throw them out, or was this kind of something that was already somewhat on your horizon? Either one of you can take that first.
Sure, I'll go ahead. I mean, we were in planning our social roadmap. We tend to work on a 6-month cycle, and we were planning that out last November. So we as a group, as a team, immediately decided that at that point we were going to diversify. And so this is, I mean, obviously we're paying attention to this news, but we're not like the world is not ending, the sky is not falling. So on our roadmap, we're thinking about things like, social channels like like Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. But, more importantly, we've just launched a fairly robust newsletter strategy where we have, an enterprise newsletter, the Inquirer morning newsletter, which is, really doing well, and we're seeing great metrics on that. We brought on an SEO editor, which I think has been, we've seen immediate impact. So really making sure that like our back end technical stuff is in place. And then on the front end, we've been working with the newsroom across the board to really sharpen our skills there. And that's another source of traffic that we're paying attention to. We're seeing great impact. We're thinking about, other things we've brought on a social video editor, but social video doesn't just mean Facebook, right? And in fact, I'm a believer that like really good social video also works on site. So we're thinking about that, and we're not just being platform specific as a method, because we do see great engagement time. We do see reach, expand when we tell some of our stories in that medium. And then we're bringing on an analytics editor. So, recirculation is something, especially as we've moved to a meter model, we want to make sure that back to, Zuckerberg's time well spent, we want to make sure that our subscribers are spending time on the site and that we're paying attention to their activities. We know what kind of content they're responding to. We're making sure they can find other content. So that's some of our focus. And Facebook is just one, small piece of all of that.
Yeah, and for us, we started looking back in around the same time, October, November, where we thought, okay, well, there were like the rumors about like the different feed that they were testing, and X number of countries, and so it was time to start really thinking like, all right, we got to start thinking beyond Facebook, or not just Facebook. And so for us, I mean, luckily we've had like a good newsletter strategy here. The thing that we're looking to really push next is making sure that people just, the simple things, have our app, for example, make sure that people download our app, and get the push alerts, and keep redefining our push alert strategy, and just the order that stories appear in on the app, and consider like a mobile editor. Those sorts of things are the things that we're really focusing in on here. And for us, to a certain degree, the announcement by Facebook kind of just sped up everything for us, and kind of like in a great sort of like, it was kind of like a relief. We were like, oh, okay, thank God, let's just like get the ball rolling, and let's just do it, and that was the nice part about it, where we're just like, if we would post on our main channel, or on our main brand page, we were posting 30 times a day.
Yeah.
Because we were like, all right, just post. And all of a sudden we're all like, all right, let's not post 30 times a day, because that's like an insane number. So let's pull it back. And now we're thinking about maybe even sending fewer posts, and making sure that those posts are the best posts. And then looking at the analytics the next day, and why did this work? Why didn't that work? And just, ramping up the conversations about what works on social and that sort of thing. And then even on the at the site level, on our site, are the stories that we have online already, are they ready socially themselves? Do they have the right art on them? Do they have the right headlines that really entice people to share them on their own channels? So it's not just us doing the work on our channels. We have to try to make sure that they're set up so it's easy enough for people and it entices people to actually just share it themselves, because that's where the real power of social media is. It's not through like, the Palm Beach Post on Facebook. It's, Tom and Jerry, sharing it on their own pages and their own profiles and saying like, hey, look at what I found here. It's just great to read from the get-go. The Washington Post does like such a great job of having stories that their headlines are social ready. Like they make you want to read it. And that's what we're trying to do more here.
Another thing we're working on here, and along with Dan, we are also looking at mobile editors. I think this is causing us to really refocus on our property too, and to take some of that crazy energy that we were exerting on the Facebook hamster wheel, and be thinking about like our visual journalism and reinventing that. And we're going to be doing a lot of work this year. Also, I think personally, it's the community editor is going to come back again. It was the rage, and then all of a sudden we were all on the Facebook train, and we're introducing a community editor on our team to really, I think improve the quality of the dialogue and discussion that's happening on the Inquirer, Philly.com. And I think that that's important too, building our own community. And, it's not either or, it's and, but I think we can keep taking some lessons from what we're seeing at Facebook and apply them on properties.
Yeah, kind of going back to the point both of you just made on that, we know what works in this new ecosystem, whether it's on Facebook or even on the other social networks, in terms of individuals sharing versus the brand account being the only one that's out there pushing stuff, and that seems to be the move away. Is this something that you guys are thinking about in your newsrooms in terms of getting more of the staff more individually engaging with people on social platforms? I mean, you might already be doing that, but of how much the individuals on staff versus the main news account, what the difference might be with this new change coming about.
Yeah, for us, I mean, we are definitely thinking about trying to get the more members of the newsroom definitely engaged in social, in the comments section. Obviously, carefully. You don't want to sort of like have something explode in your face because you're dealing with a troll, for example. And we've had some success just specifically with education, for example. We launched a Facebook group around our K through 12 education here in Palm Beach County, and the group has almost 700 members. And our schools reporters have done a really great job of engaging with people on there, answering questions, posting content, and not just our own content, but sometimes posting content from New York Times or NPR, and just really getting that conversation going. So we want to take that and expand it to more members of the newsroom, especially like Kim was mentioning, like the community reporters and community editors. Those are the folks that will really also have just a major impact on just getting that dialogue going with the community on the social space and just on other platforms that we end up hitting as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing a lot of work over the last 6 months. The Philadelphia Media Network in general has been going through this whole reinvention, and we were lucky enough to partner with CUNY to run some training, and some of that training was about using social for both reporting and distributing content. So it's a long-term project that we've been working on with our newsroom, because once again, with these platforms, I appreciate that, almost quarter by quarter, we're going to have to revisit our strategy and pivot, right? So we were prepared for that. And reporters, I tell them all the time, our goal collectively is to get as many eyeballs in our stories as possible, and they need to help us with that. So we're working on it. It's consistent. We definitely aren't at the place yet where we have them, some of them look at their comments and stuff, but we're not there yet. But we're also in the middle of cleaning up our community. I'm a big believer that you get the community you deserve. So first we need to clean it up and really invest in it and make sure it's a safe environment for them. And then we'll, selectively have them participate. We're running a contest right now with the Lenfest Institute. It's great, where the Eagles are going to the Super Bowl. We're running a contest across the newsroom to get folks to engage on social, and there's some carrots there for them, and it's not just about like Twitter followers. It's like most engaging conversation Twitter thread or Reddit conversation or whatever. We're trying to really encourage that. And then in terms of Facebook groups, we're very early on, but we're right in the middle of what we want to do there. I've been a little more cautious because, one, I want to create some subscriber value, and two, I'm a believer that I don't want to just start 1,000 Facebook groups. Like it's really important that there's an editorial goal, a commitment. It needs to be resourced, but I definitely see that as a potential as well for the newsroom to engage.
I might have to have whoever isn't speaking mute, because it seems like we're getting some feedback. Just so you guys see that. Sure. Well, to follow up there, Kim, you mentioned, you guys have been going through a pretty big newsroom change and new roles anyway. And in terms of kind of bringing community management, bringing it back and making it cool again, making community engagement cool again. But what part of that do you think is going to be somewhat affected by these changes, or not?
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Sorry, I have lots of feedback from somewhere here. But in terms of making new roles, in terms of engaging the community more, how much will the work that they're doing be influenced by what's going on Facebook?
Dan?
For us, I just think, I think that, obviously, like we're a smaller, a smaller operation. So for us, we're concentrating more on like the hyper local thing. And for us, the fact that Facebook is making this change, that's kind of like the nice sort of like the stars are aligning for us in that way. And that we can, like, just think about like the kind of like local stories that matter to the community, because we were sharing a lot on our channels. We share some of the viral stuff. Just we're hoping like, oh, let's see if this gets us a bunch of clicks. And we kind of like, it's easy to lose focus when you're just trying to get clicks. You like sometimes lose focus about like what really matters. And for us, I think it continues. It sort of just reaffirms that goal of like local community journalism that matters to people. Still with like understanding, like, I think you're always reassessing about like, are people interested in this? Are they not interested in that? Which doesn't mean that we're not going to still cover the things that really matter. Like we're not going to all of a sudden say like, well, people really don't read like, local election stories. So we're not going to do local election stories. But assessing how you just, cover a bunch of, topics and whether it makes sense to cover it this way, that way, those sorts of things. But yeah, this Facebook change for us at the local level is kind of like, it's a gift, because we really can like just get super hyper focused on the individual communities. And for us here in Palm Beach County, we have all these little municipalities that we do have that opportunity to get hyper focused and get hyper local. So it's actually nice for us. So we're kind of double down on the whole hyper local thing.
Yeah, and I think for us, like, as I've been building out our engagement over the last few months, and I think, maybe a couple of years ago, 75% of our work would have been very focused on Facebook, right? So that it wouldn't have given us the capacity and to focus as much on the community piece. But I'm really excited about it, because I think, back to my point about creating a great owned and operated experience, I think the conversation on platform is part of that. And so it's going to force us to be really thoughtful, rather than just slap a bunch of comments up there and say, oh, we've done our job, people can talk, and let's not bother with it and just let it run because we're so busy focusing on Facebook and Twitter. I think it's a real, almost like a renaissance, a time to think about those conversations. And with what's happened, gosh, in the last year and a half, I guess, across the U.S., a lot of discussions about local and news deserts and all the rest. I think I'm seeing, at least in the greater Philadelphia area, people are starting to really refocus back on and value local journalism. And I'm excited about that. And when I meet people in the community and they, they hear what I do, they want to talk to me. They want, when we launched the meter, we weren't sure how that was going to go. Suddenly asking people to pay, and it's been fantastic. Like, we've overperformed our subscription by like an incredible amount. So I think, back to my point about Facebook is just one piece of that puzzle. I think the time for us is to turn the attention on ourselves and create that great experience. Now, saying that, when you have a subscriber site, there's the term the funnel, right? So you have a funnel. You want folks to get to the top of that funnel and be aware of your site. You want them to engage with the journalism and hopefully convert into being a paying subscriber, so we're sustainable. Facebook is a valuable lever towards getting folks to feed into that funnel. I hate the funnel word, but it is what it is. And so I think that's really important. Other advantages of Facebook, because I'm not going to sit here and, beat them up because they are a business partner, is we have definitely a younger demographic on there. When I compare the demographics of our website and Facebook, it's definitely more gender balanced, and it's more in an age range that we eventually want, our site to look like. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. We often will, we experimented there with video first and saw how our audience responded to that. So what can we learn from that to apply to our website? What kind of content resonates with our audiences on Facebook, and how can we think about that when we're programming our website? How does, we're playing around a lot with day parting and really being mindful of how we program our site. We take some lessons on what we're seeing from Facebook and we feed that back into the website. So it's a tool. It's a useful tool. It just can't be the silver bullet anymore.
Kind of along those lines, we talk a lot about the content itself and the kind of stories we're thinking about and how that might affect, how that works on one platform versus another. With this move coming, you kind of touched on it there with local being such a driver. How much of kind of the move away from Facebook will change what kinds of stories are covered, if at all?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we're going to all of a sudden change all that much, because I think a lot of the things that people find interesting on Facebook are still good stories that you can have on your own site. I think if it changes anything, it's like Kim was saying, like the amount of effort that you spend or the number of bodies you throw at Facebook. And so that gives you an opportunity to really touch the other products that maybe you haven't been, giving the proper TLC to over the last, however many number of years that we've been devoting to paying attention to Facebook. But I think for us, it just gives us an opportunity to. I think if we do anything different, maybe we just do a few more of like the longer reads. It gives us an opportunity instead of like focusing in on like quick hits that you can then turn around and post on Facebook, for example. You have an opportunity to like slow down a bit and just concentrate more on like the longer reads that really have like a greater impact. But for us, I don't think it'll have too much of a major change. I don't think it'll be like a huge paradigm shift about what we've covered, because I think here locally we've kept it pretty. We've stayed on that course about like covering local news and focusing in on what matters to the people of Palm Beach County.
I think for us, I don't think it changes what we cover at all, to be truthful. And I think it's as a news organization, I think it's problematic if you're taking your lead from Facebook. I think when I think about how we cover stories, I think about, like we did a piece recently, or we did an investigative series, Toxic City. And it was all about how here in Fishtown, a lot of old factories and smelters shut down, and it wasn't regulated by the government. And now there's like a lot of gentrification in that area, a lot of houses going up, and sort of toxicity is like floating through the air. It's, And so when we thought about that story, not at any point did I say, well, we've got to cover it this way for Facebook, or, maybe we should change how we're rolling it out. It was more like, take the series, take the stories. I always talk to my social team about unpacking the story and thinking about which elements work on which platform, and what bits of the story is and how to format it and how to tell that story. So it doesn't really change. I mean, maybe we're a little more mindful about how much time we invest in Facebook now, or we know that our video elements will do well on Facebook, so that's the piece we take on there, or galleries or whatever. But it's not. I'm not going to walk into a morning meeting and say, "Hey guys, I think we really need to cut that story because it's not going to work on Facebook." Now, saying that, one of the things we do encourage folks here to do is to use those platforms, whether it's, the Andy Carvin model of Twitter or, on Facebook, to really dig and mine story ideas. We have a reporter, Anna Orso, who's so amazing at finding these gems that float up through social, and then, turning it into a longer piece that runs both in our paper, in print and online. So I think it's still just part of the mix, but this change doesn't change our approach.
Now we have an incoming question. Can each of you provide kind of a few examples of the strategy you have for programming your website a bit differently? I know you talked a little bit about day parting, for instance, there, Kim, but for example, event-based work, I'm thinking State of the Union later today, Golden Globes, Oscars, big things that we tend to plan around. You've got a Super Bowl coming up in Philly. Without giving away all the plans, what are some things you're thinking of about the social approach to covering those that might be a little different?
Sure. I mean, I'm right deep in Super Bowl time, so that one's easy for me. I mean, whether it's social or O&O, the number one thing we've done is we've spent a lot of time planning, right? And really stepping back last week and thinking about how we're going to play to the different platforms elements. So we know that Super Bowl week is a really big deal in Minneapolis. And by the way, I'm not a sports expert, so watch me fumble through this, but it's a really big, exciting week, and there's a lot of opportunity there. There's a lot of color and stories that are kind of come out, and then we've got the game on Sunday. So, we're thinking about, we launched last week, for the owned and operated, we really launched this this hashtag project, Our Philly, which we actually have on Instagram every day, and we incorporate photos of Philly into our morning newsletter. But we are taking that hashtag for the week, and we're really getting fan photos and stories and all the rest, and we're surfacing that on a user-generated gallery on our website. We'll take some of those photos and we'll run them on Instagram with the stories. We'll play them out on Facebook in galleries, and we'll spread them across the board. At the same time, we have Anna Orso, who's on the ground. She's in the middle of the Mall of America right now. She's meeting people, talking to different fans of New England and ourselves and Minnesotans, and she's doing kind of like a Humans of New York-ish takeover on her Instagram all day. So that's something we're focusing on. With Facebook, we're partnering with the Boston Globe, and we're running this really great debate series from Thursday to Sunday, where we're going to have face-offs, right, of folks who are, our sports personalities, their sports personalities, talking about a variety of topics. So that's something we're thinking about. And then at the same time, we're making sure that our own and operated, our stories that are running during the day are complementing all of this. If Anne is doing some gathering for social and it's a bit of her notebook, then how do we package that into a story for both print and online the next day? The game itself, we're running a live blog. That live blog will involve all elements, right? We'll have it running on the website all day long, but at the same time, social will play off of that as we're going to be doing, some live tweeting, and we'll incorporate that with the live blog. As we find good material, we'll make sure that gets sourced into stories that we're working on. So it's just these platforms all work together in terms of programming and how we think about them in general. I mean, the Super Bowl is a bit different, but we're very mindful of taking a look at our traffic, right? And we study our traffic patterns on weekdays and on weekends, and we think we're very thoughtful. We have like a 9, or I think it's 8 to 12 window, 12 to 3 across, right? And we think about what stories need to play on the homepage, what should we be getting out there on the channels, and so it's just really not being reactive, but being very proactive in what we put out there. So that's sort of how we run things.
I mean, we've also had discussions about the Super Bowl. I mean, the Dolphins haven't been good for a long time, so for us it's a little bit different. But for us, covering something like the Super Bowl, from our perspective, it's more like we come at it through like, well, what's the sort of like social, the cultural discussion around the event. We're not so much interested in the actual Super Bowl because everybody's covering like the actual game and that sort of thing. So for us, it's like, you know, and in a way, you know, we do plan it out, but then we are seeing what happens in real time. And last year, for us, the sort of big hit that we got was during the halftime show, everybody started talking about Lady Gaga's, for lack of a better term, belly fat. I don't know if that's the right term or not. I guess because she didn't have like a six pack and it wasn't like, you know, chiseled or whatever. And I guess everybody expects like, you know, celebrities to look like they're, you know, impossible, right? And so we had a reporter, Corvea Jeffries here, who just riffed on that. She, you know, wrote a little piece about that. It's like that kind of like water cooler discussion. And so for us, those are sort of the things that we think about ahead of time. Hey, let's not forget like cultural moments, and we can write those on the fly and send them out in a little bit of a different coverage mode. So for the eclipse, how can anybody forget the eclipse? We sent our weather reporter Kim Miller to Ohio. I think it was wherever like the path of totality was. It took her like somewhere in the middle of the country. And so there we did have a lot of like the kind of planning that Kim was talking about around the Super Bowl. Like, okay, we're going to need video and maybe a time lapse and what do we write about this and what are people thinking and you know, it'll play here and it'll play here. And we do get like very specific about like what pieces are going to live on what platforms and how they work in concert, because that's what we're, you know, interested in, sort of like, you know, making sure that everybody gets a piece of the action on whatever platform they might happen to be on. So those are the kinds of like, you know, that's the kind of planning that we did. And the time lapse was very specific for Facebook because we thought like, yeah, not only will it work wonderfully on Facebook because everybody's going to be interested in it, but then it's something that works on like whatever story related to like the eclipse. We can just slap that on there and it'll work great. So those are the kinds of things that, you know, we're thinking about here as far as like big events like that.
I mean, and, you know, something we haven't really talked a bit about, but, you know, kind of the elephant in the room is I'll be really curious to see what Twitter does with all of this, right? I'll be really curious to see if, I forget where I read it now, so I can't, you know, attribute it, but the idea is this Twitter's moment to really get back to its roots as a news service, potentially? And what does that look like? But once again, I don't think Twitter's going to be the answer to everything either, right? It keeps coming back to all of these tools. I also, with Facebook, I come from a broadcast background. This is actually my first print publication that I've ever worked at, but you know, I kind of think of Facebook now and more so moving forward, if you watch their moves, as like the broadcaster, right? They're turning into, I mean, wouldn't it be interesting to see them evolve into like the CBS, right? So they're the distribution and they're looking for all sorts of programming and they're building that out for viewership in the same sort of ways. So I'm just always thinking about that when I'm programming our Facebook content. I think of it like, you know, what are the best times to launch our shows and content? And even when I work with our branded group, which I consider our commercials, like how do we incorporate that as well? So I don't know. Just some speculation.
We think about the same thing. I know that sometimes we'll launch like a very big investigative piece and like it might be going live on the site at like 7 o'clock on a Friday. And I'm like, well, 7 o'clock on a Friday is not like a great time for us to be all like, all right, guys, read this like 100-inch story, you know? Like, and so then we'll like actually take a step back and be like, well, we should send this out on Facebook probably at like 8 o'clock on Saturday morning when people are really starting to wake up, they're checking their phone. And yeah, exactly. We're having those kinds of discussions as well and trying to figure out like what makes sense. The Twitter thing, I don't know. Twitter has done such a great job at screwing up that like I'll be interested to see like, how they do this or what they do with this, because you're right. I mean, it's like it should be their moment. This is like their little gift. This is like a golden egg where they're all like, oh, what are we going to do with this? But they'll, you know, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what they do. Yeah.
Well, and if not Twitter, and who will kind of sweep in and be the next big social media star? I mean, I think, you know, we've seen a lot of experimentation happening across platforms, but for you guys, you know, if there's less focus on Facebook and we'll see on Twitter, Yeah. What else? Who else are you focusing on in terms of the other platforms and where things might be going?
Can I be really controversial and say, what if we don't need another Facebook? Like, what if we don't? I mean, there'll always be new things that come up and new platforms and stuff, but this mentality of like running towards this big thing that's going to answer everything, like maybe this is our wake up call, right? And as the whole industry changes and how we're thinking about monetization and how we have to think of multiple revenue streams because ads are declining and getting folks to pay, like I'm kind of excited about it, right? And I think this move hopefully gives us some room to focus on getting our strategy, in play. And a strategy is not running in another direction to chase after the answer. A strategy is really thinking about what's your purpose and what differentiates you, which is tough in this business. And what would, when I think about strategy, I think about like, if we were gone tomorrow, would people miss us? Right? And why would they miss us? And how can we focus on that? And I don't think that's because we have a really good Facebook page. I just don't.
Kim, you took the words right out of me. I was thinking the same thing. I mean, it's less about, oh, maybe it'll be Pinterest. Maybe Snapchat has like, the answer or whatever. I think the reason that I love this change is that it really gives us an opportunity to like sort of, get back in ranks, have internal discussions and say like, how do we make our own products better and focus in on that as opposed to worrying about like, oh, who's going to give us the next pipeline to readership, which is still important. I mean, like, I think that we're still going to be getting a ton of traffic from Facebook for a while. It's not like it's all of a sudden going to just be like going from like, a ton to nothing. But yeah, like Kim said, instead of just like, saying like, oh man, I hope we find another, like answer to Facebook, it's more about, yeah, like making your own products better, making sure that, the public out there and your readers know that you offer these products, your websites, your newsletters, your apps, those sorts of things, and get them to really, consume it in those various ways, as opposed to just relying on Facebook and put, the fate of your success into your own hands, as opposed to just hoping that, another tech company comes along and all of a sudden, we have hat in hand and saying like, well, we hope you like, make magic happen for us. So for us, that's the exciting opportunity about all this.
So have either of you had Facebook reach out to you about these changes and kind of try to at least engage a little bit on this? Like how are you guys working with those guys?
I'm fortunate that through the Lenfest Institute, we've had, I was part of the Table Stakes project last year. And so Facebook engaged with us on that. So I have a really good open dialogue with them that I can reach out. Truthfully, the day I reached out, I was like, how are you figuring all of this out? What's going on? Like I shot off an email and we haven't had a chance to connect yet because I wanted to have a quality conversation. But I mean, I think they're there. Let's be honest. I mean, I don't know the inner workings, but from my experience, I used to work at Scribble Live and I know the other side of being on that side of the fence, and you're scripted, right? You have very specific talking points and it just is what it is. And they will too. So I imagine I'll hear very similar things that I'm reading everywhere else. My biggest, the thing that I'm the most curious about, and we'll see when I talk with them about, is this like scoring thing about like, apparently they're surveying, users. One of the people in my local markets at another media entity was like, hey, she sent me screen cap. She's like, look at the questions I'm getting asked about you guys. And so I'm curious about that bit because it makes me, I think I have a lot of respect for our audience. They're very smart, but at the same time, I'm just curious about how they're gonna rate news orgs. What's that all about? So, I've got to take some time to sit down with them, but they'll have their limitations as well, what they can share.
And we have a connection here via like, our parent company at, in Cox. So they're in discussions with them and talking about that with Facebook, much in the way that, you just described. I mean, like, there's not like, man, all right, guys, here are all the plans that we have. They're really not going to, lay out like the treasure map for us. But still, I mean, like, hopefully the hope or the claim that Facebook makes, like, oh, this will be really good for local news, like very local outfits like ourselves. I don't know if that'll be the case. And I've seen some of like the questions that they've asked, that very scientific survey. It's like, hey, is this a reputable news source? Yes, no. And so, it just seems like it's an interesting way that they're trying to determine whether, like, you're a legit news source or not. I'm like, this is it. This is so it'll be interesting to see, like, how it plays out. And I guess, within the news business, we're having these conversations. It's all like, not that we're like saying like, well, the public isn't to blame because of the problems that, like, we're having with Facebook. Facebook's to blame for the problem that we're having with Facebook. I mean, they're the ones that made the algorithm and the echo chamber that exists, and, like, the conservative feed versus the liberal feed and all this stuff. I mean, like, they're kind of the ones that made this happen. And so for us, it's just like, like, just again, trying to figure out, like, what this all means and what the next steps are. Hopefully, Facebook continues to communicate with us, and they can sort of at least hold our hand a little bit, although I don't know how much hand holding they will do.
And, from my perspective, like, I kind of understand why they seem to be pulling out a bit, right? I mean, I'm from Canada, and Canada has a much tighter regulation on its airwaves, right, for news and stuff than the US does. But even so, there's like regulation around how these things work. And as we watch this big, essentially what's almost like a public utility. I mean, Facebook would never say that, but, it's essentially become as useful to me as my cable and my electricity and all the rest. To not regulate information sources is a dangerous thing. And I think we all saw, what happened with that. So if they're not going to find ways to regulate it, then I can understand why they might be shifting to more personality-based, entertainment-based content that lends with friends and family and conversation, and staying away from news a bit. I mean, it doesn't benefit me directly. I love having that referral traffic, and I hope it's still one channel, but I can, intellectually, I can understand why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my coworker just the other day. I mean, would any of us really want the responsibility of deciding who's a legitimate news source versus not a legitimate news source, who deserves to get the kind of views that some get versus others may not get? And I mean, I wouldn't want that kind of responsibility personally. I can like you're saying, Kim. Yes, I can understand why they're just like, maybe we're not like that interested in, like, deciding, oh, this news source is more legitimate than this news source, that sort of thing. I mean, I will say that it's interesting that Facebook wants to be, the sort of like the public square, and companies create these products and they expect people to use them in a certain way, and then when they're not used in a certain way, they're kind of like, well, that's weird, and then they keep trying to get people to use it in a certain way, and it just feels like, and it makes sense, and it's smart that Facebook is not, ending up like MySpace, where they're all like, nah, this is the thing, and hopefully we'll be all right. So they keep kind of like reinventing themselves, and they keep doing that because they see how people end up using, like, these products in an unexpected way, and this is just another sort of like reset button for them that makes a lot of sense.
I will say that I hope moving forward that they're a little more mindful of what they ask newsrooms to do. So, fortunately, when you're in local, you can't go and suddenly hire 20 video people because Facebook says it's a good idea and that's the future of Facebook and that's the way. And I just think I hope that they be a little more mindful, because they've got to know, back to it's a business and you make business decisions. I think it's irresponsible to throw out these requirements and then pivot 3 or 4 months later. And I don't think it was intentional, but I hope they've learned a big lesson from this. We have one video person who's going to work both, owned and operated platforms and social platforms. So I'm not so worried. And even last year when they were saying, oh, you got to up the video stuff, you got to get this all ready, I was like, do we? Really? So that's my thought on them. And I want to continue to be great partners with them. I hope they, it'd be nicer if we had a longer view into their roadmap, but they're probably figuring out as well. I'm very appreciative of some of the resources and training they've lent us. It's been good, but I think, the responsibility is on us as publishers too, to make our business decisions, to have our clear strategy, to have our roadmap. It's not, Facebook doesn't owe us anything. They just don't, right? That's my opinion anyway.
No, absolutely. And I mean, Facebook it, like I said before, it's still great for referral traffic, but then Facebook is also great for sort of the tools that they have where that you pay for some, like some of the ad, like, you know, the ad engine that it has, the ability to reach those audiences if you do want people to, like, you know, be aware of like your product. And the nice thing is that you can do it pretty cheaply. I mean, it's not that expensive to advertise on Facebook. So there's that, not that, you know, not every newsroom has the sort of like a disposable, income, so to speak, to just, you know, throw money at Facebook. But at least those tools are still there for us to be able to use.
Great. Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour, so I have one more question, and you guys can kind of add final thoughts onto that. I feel like we kind of talked around it, but not actually necessarily said, is Facebook actually leaving news? I mean, can they leave news? I guess is kind of the ultimate question out of this. You know, what will it be if we were completely separated? So that's what I'll leave you guys with, the last question here. Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, is the entire world going to leave news? Probably not. So those 2 billion users are probably not leaving news. And so I don't think Facebook is going to leave news. I think maybe they're rethinking their commitment to it, how it's delivered, the type of content they want to surface. Maybe they want to leave it up to their users and take less responsibility. Or maybe, wouldn't be surprised if we see another new product, right? Suddenly, maybe there's like and I have no information here, but you know, maybe there's a second news feed or a new place to see the news that's separated out from the community, more of a way to tune in. I don't think they're going to leave it completely. I don't. I just think they're changing.
And I completely agree. I mean, you know, there are so many like photos that people want to see of like my dog, for example. And so I think that like having the diversity in your news feed is nice, to have that mix where you get some of the information that, you know, you see from news sources, but then also like the stuff from friends and family. I mean, it would be kind of insane to me, although again, like, you know, Facebook has its own prerogatives, obviously, but that they only want like, okay, just friends and family. And having that you know, diversity in there, it helps. I mean, a ton of adults in the United States still get their news from Facebook, and if it was to all of a sudden completely disappear, I don't know whether they would find that sort of like a palatable option. I mean, Kim, I think, you know, it's an interesting thought. Yeah, the whole like maybe they do come up with like their own news feed, and I did see some of the tests or some screen grabs of the tests where they were mentioning like some of the local news sources. Yeah. I think there was one about like from Oregon that I saw where they're saying like, oh, you see what happened locally, and they have little like, you know, little like units where you can see like, oh, this is a news item from this local news source, this local news source. So I think they're starting to test some of that out for some local news organizations. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out, whether that works, and what it means for, you know, papers, especially like, you know, Post, for example.
Great. Well, thanks a lot, both of you, Kim, Dan. Thanks for joining us today and for taking the questions. For anyone that's out there watching, either live or after the fact, tomorrow is the AS&E Journalism Awards deadline. So if you've got fantastic journalism, whether or not it did well on Facebook, we would like to see that and have that be submitted to those awards. But thanks again to the panelists, and thank everyone out there for watching. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, have a great day.
You too.
You too.